I would have done a live reaction to this chapter if I realised how long it was going to be. But I started to read it, and then I realised the length, and then I couldn't stop reading it because it was really good. Also, my reaction wouldn't have been genuine because it wasn't a live reaction. But One Punch Man, Chapter 92, Manhole. Yes. I am so happy to be a fan of this series. It's so good. Like, this chapter was really good. Like, we got world building, we got excellent action, you know, we got everything that makes most chapters interesting. Well, not world building, but, you know, information, and, oh, it was so good. It really was. I loved it. It was... Let's start talking about it. So, the chapter starts off with Saitama, which I was surprised about, especially because of how it ended last time. It's not long, it's literally just a page. Saitama shows up for 2 pages in this entire bit. Actually, just before I start talking about it, I want to talk about the cover art. The cover art was in colour, it was great, it was really detailed and nice, but it also represents binary opposition. And just so you know, binary opposition is basically a theory. And it's a film theory and a media theory that basically, you know, there's all, like, conflict is what drives the story, and you can generally tell who the conflict is between because of the opposition. It's quite clear who opposition is. So in this, like, so think like in like Empire Strikes Back, for example, Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker. That, if you look at that image, that's them there. But also, even more, if you want to look at just this one right here, you look at the image of Saitama and Garo, you know, just even in the small details, like, Garo isn't ready to fight him yet, but, like, they're definitely building up the binary opposition between them. So, like, how Saitama is very simply drawn in that panel, but Garo is drawn in immense detail. Saitama's colours are quite bright and bold and vibrant in comparison to, Garo's, not blander colours, but darker, like, moodier colours, you know. They're building it up to this thing, and obviously apart from the fact that, you know, Saitama doesn't have hair, Garo has hair, things like that, you know, just like the face shape, everything along those lines, you know, they're building it up to this fight. Garo isn't ready to fight him yet, but they are setting up opposition for them. So I think, no, well, they were going to fight in any case, but yeah. So it starts off with Saitama getting ready, and he leaves, he's basically in his hero outfit, he leaves, that's all we see of him for the first fight, for the beginning of the chapter. We'll get into the end at the end. But I think it was also just a great way to set up. First of all, because of the ending, it really, you know, I was blown away by the ending because of it. But at the same time, I think it was a great way to say, okay, we are beginning very, very, very soon, which we should have been in any case, but, you know, it's basically their way of saying, okay, Saitama is leaving now, he's out of the picture, the action's going to start, because once Saitama's gone, all the fights can begin, so when Saitama comes back and everyone's in trouble, he can come and save them. We also learn, because I can talk about this now, that Gyoro is a woman, and the thing is with Gyoro's, which I assume that's Gyoro at least, because the only one who really knows who's looking after Orochi. You know what, I'll get into that. So we get to see this interaction, this really interesting interaction between Gyoro and Garo. And the main thing to take away from it is of Gyoro explaining to us how she creates monsters, like monsters at the level of Orochi. And she goes to, and she starts explaining to Garo, and we've seen traits of this, of course, before with, like, you know, like the hole in the wall when after Saitama fought him, and, you know, his abilities and, you know, his, you know, becoming a superhuman is, you know, at this point he is a half monster. And one of the things that she ends up doing is she ends up complimenting Garo first of all by saying, you know, you're not even a full monster, yet someone like you has managed to come up against overgrown Rover's heat bomb. So we learn of heat bombs, of course, because it's a difficult thing about energy and ki in One Punch Man. It's kind of there. We've seen characters use it, so like, but I don't think we've seen any natural characters use it. So we don't know about Chose, but a lot of it seems to be explained as, like, concentrated blasts of fire in heat instead. So, like, Chose used something in the fight against Suiryu, but then we also have characters, like, who we don't know the history of fully, like Vaccine Man, for example, and then aliens who aren't monsters like Boros, who have the ability to wield and shoot energy blasts. And I used to think Genos shot lasers and energy before, until I saw clips of the anime and it was just concentrated fire blasts. So I think it's better to treat most attacks like that as fire attacks, just because they don't have, like, you know, I think it's just because they didn't have, like, the properties of flames and shoot, like it's clear that fire's being shot. But still, I think for now, energy I should try and focus on less and focus more on the idea of, you know, heat. I don't really know what with heat, but, you know, in any case, she compliments Garo in the sense of saying, you know, you aren't even a full monster, but you could withstand the heat bombs that Overgrown Rover was firing. You know, your body holds limitless potential. And this will come into something I'm talking about now. It's like, but that is not enough, you know. And then she starts talking about, you know, leave you to me, and I'll raise you into the strongest monster. And, you know, Goro straight away is like, you know, what are you going to do? Like, you're psychic, are you going to teach me psychokinesis or something? And she's like, and she very quickly makes it clear, you know, it's no techniques or no transformations, nothing like that. I'm just going to make you die over and over and over again. And this is interesting because everyone's kind of coming to this conclusion ever since we learned about the information about the limiter. I think about people's limiters and obviously how Saitama probably broke his, and that's why he's so amazingly strong, is I think this is kind of what separates the difference between monsters and humans. Well, yeah, I'm not doing a good job of explaining that. So the way Goro explains it is she basically goes, you know, the reason people die, like, you know, the true path to becoming a real monster is because, you know, putting your body through amazing amounts of stress over and over and over again, experiencing death itself. At first, I don't know, like, I think they basically mean going to the very border of death and coming back will make you insanely strong. So basically saying, you know, just saying genes, you know, the more, like, you know, the more you come close to the death and you come back, you get a massive power boost. So I think Goro is instead not just talking about, because she basically goes on to say about how, you know, people of low intelligence can do this, like, you know, their growth often stagnates. However, it is possible if you keep coming back and back and back from death, you know, you can really grow into an extremely terrifying monster, really powerful being, which explains Saitama, of course, because that's exactly what Saitama did throughout his whole routine of training. Because Saitama, not only was he consistently pushing himself for free, and I suppose this is kind of the power difference between someone like Goro and someone like Saitama, is Goro's been doing this consistently over and over and over again, right? Like, he's been doing great, but for what? Like, I'm not saying he wasn't strong before, but constantly being put through these death situations for what, like 2-3 days in the world of One Punch Man? Saitama was doing that for 3 years. He was constantly training, an average person pushing himself to his physical limit every single day, his mental limit every single day, which would explain why the low intelligence doesn't really affect him. I don't think Saitama's an idiot. I don't at all. I think he's of average intelligence. But the mental training is probably like that he said of, you know, not turning the heat on in the winter and not turning the air conditioner on in the summer is kind of what built up his mental resistance, which helped him let him break through his limiter. And, you know, he wasn't just training this whole time. Saitama was also fighting monsters this whole time as well. He was constantly working hard, going to the point of death. And if you read any side stories, we know this because most of his old fights in his early days, he barely won in like a lot of sense. So obviously Crablante, but I think it was like personification of electric pull cord. It was only when something like, you know, he had toothache and then obviously it happened, but he was on the brink of like pretty close to dying, and he came back, beat him, and he grew a lot stronger because of that. And that's a repeat segment. So I think this is kind of what it is. It's not necessarily just being a monster. I think she's trying to also break his limiter at the same time of him becoming a monster. And something else to note about that is Goro goes into the detail of saying, you know, one of the most important things is that it has to be tailored to an individual's experience. So it works with Saitama, who was an average human, pushing himself to the limit every single day, doing things like, you know, 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats, and 10k run. It's not easy for a normal person to do every single day, but also, of course, it was also pushing himself mentally as well, all for the sake of becoming a hero, and that's kind of how his experience was personally tailored to him. And it also makes sense with what Goro's been doing, because not only, once again, it's him all working for himself to become the best monster he can be, but also I think holding on to his human side has definitely helped him grow, but also, especially because of, I think protecting Tario has been a massive thing that's boosted it, because a lot of the times he ended up pushing himself further to protect this kid, you know, like when Def Gatlin was firing the bullets out, it was all to protect him, and, you know, he deflected all the gunfire, and of course, once again, I think he survived partially, obviously, because he didn't want to lose to Royal Ripper and Bug God, but it was also Tario who got kidnapped. So I think his human side has definitely been a massive boost into his personal tailored experience, and Tario's been a massive source of that too. So she's trying to break his limiter, especially because she does go to say how easy it is to turn someone into a monster, but to turn someone into a someone of Orochi's level is an entirely different story. And, you know, it's very few people she's actually managed to do that have managed to transform into dragon. And she's actually, you know, I mean, obviously she's the brains behind it, but she talks about some quite horrible things she's done, like monster breeding, you know, causing people, basically breaking down people as much as they can, physically, mentally, emotionally, just to try and turn them into monsters, which is disgusting. It's vile in what ways. Like, it's put very simply, but it's not nice. No, bad. And she goes on to explain about how, you know, she had a lot of failures, but none of them have managed to breach past dragon, but she had her first success. And this is the closest we've ever got to seeing Orochi in his human form. And once again, it's another black outline. It's like it's a really basic black model. And we also see Gyorogyo's human form. And the thing is, I take that as I've been interested to see the person who turned into Orochi. I was very curious to learn who this person was beforehand, but I take that as Wano Murata basically saying it's not that important to the story. We don't really need to know because they tease this kind of stuff if it was. Like Gyorogyo, for example. So Gyorogyo, they show, I assume that's her human form, because she's the only one who really knows about it, and maybe that's what she was like before she became a monster. But also just because of her design, more because they don't show her overall appearance, maybe she can transform between her monster form and her human form? That might be something she can do, just because, as we see here, like, you know, we didn't see the whole picture, and if this was her previous form, and it's something that we're going to see in the future, it makes sense just to tease it a little bit. So that was a kind of a teaser, I'd imagine, and then we're going to see him different, like a better, well, her, like, fully in the future at some point. And she goes on to, excuse me, you're making kind of a fuss. Monster King Orochi. And that design was incredible. Like, this has been part of me, like, while I've been waiting, it's like, One Punch Man's taken a while this time. I wonder what's going on. And obviously because it was the long page, but the art in this chapter every chapter it's great, but, oh, I made the camera wobble. This chapter was amazing as well. Truly, it was great. Like, that panel, like, that wasn't even Orochi in his final form, and he looked really intimidating. Like, that's the level, so that's like kind of Dragon Plus-ish, if I had to guess. Because obviously, he's at a level which he made over dragons at this point now, Cower and Fear, but his design is so different compared to even other dragon level threats. Like, the one who's come closest to, like, that kind of wicked, nasty design, I suppose, really, has either been Goketsu or Elder Centipede. There aren't really that many who go to that such gruesome detail, and that really represents, like, the kind of torture that person must have had to go through, that Gyorogyo put him through, or her through. I imagine it's a him because of the silhouette. But yeah, that's some good art. And after bigging up Orochi so much this chapter, one of the main points is Gyorogyo keeps saying, but you know, you possess qualities even greater than Orochi's. You have the potential to surpass and become a better monster than Orochi is right now. And just, you know, you keep exploding through these walls in such a short amount of time. That fight against Real Ripper, you broke through another wall. And she keeps just going on to him about it, and she's like, you know, your monstification is coming along nicely, you're doing all this, so join forces with me, and I will help you achieve your dream. You will become the greatest monster in the world. And this is kind of a thing, because Garo, bang, straight away is like, get the hell away from me and just get out here. Like, he doesn't care about the Monster Association. But it's a question, once again, of Garo's loyalties. Where did they lie? Because Garo is someone who has been, you know, he's been talking about, like, how much he wants to become, you know, humanity's greatest enemy. He wants to rule. He basically wants to take over humanity. He doesn't want people's help, and, well, like, he just wants to become the greatest monster that there ever is, like the greatest villain in history kind of thing. But anytime he sees, like, there's an opportunity, like, especially the Monster Association, they come up to him and they go, you know, we want you to, you know, we want to help you achieve your goal. And he's like, get out of here. So maybe this is a case of, you know, he wants to do it alone, but he's shown this is his human side, I think, talking, and, you know, him rejecting kind of help from monsters, but his monster side rejects the help from heroes. Heroes don't help him, but, like, people, he rejects people's help and he rejects monsters' help, and it's kind of this dual thing until he truly, I think, kind of picks a side, and I don't know what it'll be, but it'll be interesting to see no matter what. So as Garo refuses, like, Gyoro just closes in on him, and he's like, you do realize you lost the ability to refuse once I set my sights on you. This is kind of a more villainous side, and it's rare we don't really, like, we see villains in One Punch Man, but it's kind of building up more of a villain, because especially at first it was Garo, but now we haven't had, like, a kind of proper villain for a while. Like, I suppose the biggest villain, realistically, we've ever had, in my eyes, is probably Deep Seeking, because he's quite, like, he had his methods were simple, like, he wanted to prove he was the best, but he was quite, like, vicious, and he was dark, and, you know, he would kill just for the sake of it. And I think we're starting to see things like this in Gyoro, not necessarily that, but, like, an actual villainous side to him, an antagonist to our protagonist, of course, because she's very much just being like, you know, what makes you think you have a choice? You know, obviously we've seen that she does all this cruel stuff and what we've heard of her talk about, but she's also just not nice, I suppose is the thing. Like, she says to him, you know, you lost the ability to reject me the moment I saw you, and she psychos him, right? She locks him in with her psychic abilities. She's like, my psychokinesis is so powerful that it rivals, that, like, it makes the abilities of the psychics from, Fubuki and Tatsumaki look like nothing. It's in the power of, she calls it, like, the realm of the gods' psychokinesis. And how does Goro respond? He just starts walking. He's only a little bit, but he's like, you know, is this all it is? Is this all you got? Because I've got, like, fighting spirit. And he's moving despite the fact she's doing this to him. And actually, just now I'm thinking about it, like, the psychics, like, so far, I mean, it could just be coincidence, but all the psychics have been women. I wonder if there's some kind of connection there. I don't know what, because we don't really know everything that's gone on, but we know different degrees of psychic ability exist, and I wonder if there's some kind of, I know it's an anime thing, it's a bit of a stretch, but, like, there's some kind of underground, like, oh, look at the women psychics over here. It could be something along those lines. So as he keeps moving, like, at the same time, Gyoro's like, I gotta put him down, but he's amazing. Like, all she can see at this point, really, is someone she needs to take. She's like a wild dog. Like, imagine, like, a really, really fast dog. That's what she sees, like a really fast greyhound, but he's wild. She needs to put a leash on him and tame him so she can use him. And straight away, she starts throwing rocks, and Goro's like, just blocks them, like, smashes them out of the way. They're nothing to him. And he very quickly makes a point of how he can move, but at the same time, you know, he can start, like, the psychokinesis stopped affecting him when she started throwing the rocks, and he's like, you know, this is the limit of your ability. You can only use one ability at a time. You can focus on one thing at a time, and this is your problem. This is why you fail. This is why psychics aren't a big deal to me. And I want to talk about this quickly, because something that happened in the past was with Fubuki. When Fubuki fought Super Ash, she started to display abilities that she could control two things at once. So, like, she could stop the Blizzard Bunch attacking her, but at the same time she stopped Super S's whip. And that's focusing on two separate things, kind of. So maybe this is something that she'll have to deal with, and then maybe there might be a Fubuki versus Psychos fight, perhaps. I think it's a bit of a stretch, but maybe Tatsumaki will fight her, and then we'll see, like, the difference between a monster psychic and the ability of human psychics, if you get my drift. I think there's something there, though, with Fubuki Gyoro, though, just because of the different abilities. And Goro starts having his little speech, and he's like, a mediocre monster like you is nothing compared to a genius like me. It was just cool, and he's very just much like, you know, it's a good thing I landed exactly where I am right now, because if I take out you, I can take out the brains, and if the brains is gone, the whole organization is gonna crumble. And then that pose of him on the rock, and just, the awesome art, and he's like, it's time to start hunting. Goro! I'm supposed to not like you, because you're built up to be a villain, but you're also very cool, which makes it difficult, because you've got such amazing poses, and, it was great. It was awesome. The thing is, this is kind of what makes Orochi and Gyoro terrifying. I suppose Gyoro is who I meant to say, is, you know, he's like, oh, I guess I don't have time for this, I've got to say Menji. Orochi-sama, if you will, please. And when Orochi tears him down, now I was ready to see some other monsters, some other Dragon Class people, some of the executives in the Monster Association. I did not expect to see Orochi in this chapter at all. I was ready for him to kind of sit on the sidelines and just be menacing, and maybe when he ends up fighting, because there's talk of who he might fight, I've got some hints on that at the end, but, you know, I thought, you know, when he eventually fights his final opponent, whether that's Goro or Saitama, it's just going to be you know, that's when we see Orochi finally in action. It just became like Frieza or Namek, where, you know, we don't see him in action that much, but, you know, his reputation explains everything we need to know about him. And I thought that was going to be it, but I was wrong, and I was happy, because how good was this fight? So as Orochi grabs Garo, it's only kind of, as this chapter's been revealed and we see more of Orochi, it's kind of, maybe it represents what he wants to be, but what he never could be. So obviously through Giorgio's like constant torture of physical and mental and emotionless, you know, this was a normal person first, and it kind of represents what, I suppose this person who was originally, who was a person, who Orochi is now. You know, he starts off by wearing a mask of his face. And I thought that was actually just a nice touch, I suppose. Like, you know, maybe this person still wanted to be human. Like, they probably never wanted this. They wanted to be human. They wanted to stay themselves. But then in return, obviously there's a vicious monster beneath them. And maybe that was representative of who they were as a person in real life. Maybe they kept up a very nice and calm personality, but in reality they had like such dark inner thoughts, and they've always kept them bottled down, and maybe that's how Giorgio sorted it. But in any case, Giorgio activates something, and we change and the whole landscape changes, and we see for the first time a proper scale of Orochi standing up, and it's big. It's big. It's massive. Like, I like the idea that the Monster Association can change on the inside too, which could lead to groups splitting up, joining together, interesting fights possibly, and interesting combinations. But I say that in particular because just Orochi's size, like, we know he's big in any case, because Murata and One have done a great job, especially Murata, of course, with the art, of showing how big Orochi is, and, like, you know, to really just try and put him into scale of, like, first of all, it was Metal Knight who was quite big, and he was minuscule to Orochi, and then, of course, when, Garo went to the Monster Association for the first time, Orochi was sitting there the entire time, bending over, watching everyone. And once again, they've done a great job here of just emphasizing how big and terrifying Orochi is, really. And I did talk as well before about the deadliness of, obviously, Orochi is the big threat, but we can't ignore Giorgio, because I've compared them before to Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster, Dr. Frankenstein's monster, where, you know, everyone feared Frankenstein's monster, but then again, you shouldn't really fear the mind that created him, because that's the danger of Giorgio. She's got Orochi on a leash. Genuinely, like, on a leash. Like, the moment Orochi is the strongest monster there. Like, I don't have a doubt about that from what we've seen. But just, like, you know, she just goes, oh, Orochi-sama, please let him go. He's very important. He dropped it, like, no question. He is the ultimate kind of, like, guard dog, I suppose, for her, like, the ultimate defense. Like, no matter what, if she's in any trouble, and this is where she becomes a real problem, is at any point she can go, Orochi, come over here, and Orochi will listen to her. And that's kind of the problem with taking down Giorgio, who's the brains, is that she's guarded by the strongest brawn in the Monster Association, which obviously makes sense, but still, it's terrifying. So, Orochi, I don't know, when he puts him down, Orochi he must see something in Garo, because the moment he puts him down, he attacks him straight away with one of the tendrils. His eye goes, boom, goes straight down, and Garo manages to dodge, but Orochi very quickly recalls the tendril, like, and it just goes down and it stabs Garo straight, like, there, I suppose? Would that be where his kidney is? I think so. Basically in the center, in his body, and sends him flying into a wall, and it stays there, and it kind of just puts into the perspective of, it's kind of representation of this whole battle, really. Garo does what he can, he does what he can, but at the end of the day, Orochi is just, he's on a different level. But let's just keep talking about it. So, of course, Giorgio makes a comment about it, but I thought there was also a bit great symbolism there too, with Garo getting back up, and with a clear hole in his chest. I want you to remember that this whole fight, he's doing everything he did with a hole in his chest, not in his chest, in his body, and, you know, Giorgio, what I mean with the Giorgio eye is, like, her attention is fixed on Garo, like, you know, once again, it's that kind of thing, is like, you don't lose, like, you know, you lost all rights once you escape my sights, and once again, he's constantly in her sights, from what we see, and oh boy, and to be fair, Garo really holds his own in this fight. So when he jumps up, he starts using water flow and rock crushing, and creates like this little ball. So when he jumps up, all the tendrils deflect off of him. Then they can't do anything. And obviously, there's monsters on the sideline watching, and they're watching Orochi in action. Like, I can't believe Orochi's done this. And I suppose it could represent a few things if I think about it. Is so Garo, he jumps down. they see in the next panel, he's gone straight through them. Not around them, not over them, through them. And I think this kind of just says the difference. Obviously, maybe this is the level of Orochi, the level of Garou, the level of, like, the difference between who I assume are Tiger class. I don't know if they are, because obviously, as we know, appearances don't affect it. Like, appearances matter a little. Appearances can matter very little in One Punch Man. But from what we've seen from here as well is, you know, just the level Garou's at is he can carve through Tiger levels at no problem. Maybe it's because Orochi's such a massive monster, like not just in size but in terms of raw power. You know, the last thing he's concerned about is Tiger monsters, so he just goes straight through them because they're little concern compared to this guy. It's like comparing. It's basically like comparing an ant to a dinosaur, like to a T-Rex, which I'll talk about T-Rexes in a bit, and then he starts picking up speed. And he gets faster and faster. This whole time he's got this hole in his body. Maybe he's more aerodynamic. I don't think so. And like Yuri-O's like, his adaptability is insane. And if you think about it, a minute ago, probably, I don't know if a minute is enough time, but let's say a minute. A minute ago, he couldn't even dodge one of them. Now, all the tendrils are going after him, and he's dodging them quite easily. And I think I just have a weakness for super speed, especially how it's presented in manga and anime, because just the way it looks is amazing. Like, just the gradual build-up in speed till Garou is just a blur, and then it goes. And then that panel of just the angle is different, and then he's bouncing all along the wall, and Orochi's trying to stab him, but he can't get him. It was great. It was amazing. Stop being so good. Don't, please. I take that back. It's really good. And despite Garou's technique and power being up there, and I tend to think with Garou, he's got a healthy balance between the three of them. I think his strongest technique, his strongest ability really at this point is his speed. Only because he can quite easily keep up with Dragon class monsters and even outrun Dragon class monsters, even possibly Dragon Plus class monsters. But the fact is, he just doesn't have the power to deal those lethal hits on them, or the technique to take them down. Like, he's got, like, Demon class aren't a problem for him anymore, it's Dragon class that are the problem. Once again, it's that big gap between a Dragon class and a Demon class. Why that way? There we go. So Garou, as he's dodging, he basically says, I can keep dodging, but I'm not going to win this fight if I just keep dodging. And he goes to leap at Orochi, and rationally, he does think, well, you were originally a human, and you are a humanoid form, so the weaknesses should be the same. However, Orochi is not a human. Orochi is a monster. He is the most monster of all monsters that we have seen, in my opinion. Like, when you think of a monster, like, you look at Orochi's in this chapter, he's a monster. Because the moment that mask crumbles away, and it's like mouth after mouth after mouth, just giant mouths, ready to swallow and eat him and destroy him. That's a terrifying design. Like, One Punch Man has always had these like, you know, it's had like serious designs and never really kind of like terrifying designs. Like, you compare that to other characters. You compare it, like I said before, to Goketsu and Elder Centipede. I'll say Elder Centipede because it has the most intimidating design, and let's say Deep Sea King as well when he's in his obviously his true form. You compare that to Orochi, they are different beings in total. Just. So he goes to swallow, he goes to bite him, Garou manages to get out of the way at the last minute, rolls onto the ground, and Orochi starts to transform into his real, I assume, his real monster form. And I think it's very appropriate that as he's the king, he is referred, like, his monster form, as terrifying as it was before, it's even worse now in his actual monster form, because he is now, like, he's got a T-Rex design. He's got this T-Rex design, and it's appropriate because the T-Rex is probably the most monster animal we've ever had to compare to actual monsters. You know, I suppose comparing him to a demon class, like comparing a lion to a T-Rex. You know, lions are scary, don't get it wrong, but a T-Rex, no, not for me. All, like, these tendrils, these arms, it's like Berserk. It looks like something you'd see in Berserk. And then just all these different, like, heads and vile things pop out of his body, and Garou, all he can do in this situation is make a little joke. He's like, after the dog of monsters comes the king of worms, and he laughs a little too, because I imagine it's like a panicked laugh, because the equivalent of that kind of scenario is like when, you know, you just put in a situation where you're gonna die and or something really awkward happens, and you make a joke. That's all he can do. And what happens, not only does he start charging up a heat blast, all the little heads start charging up heat blasts, and they just rain down on Garou. He is powerful. Like, I love him. Don't get me wrong. He's fantastic. He's great. It's been a while since I've been so excited for a monster. Like, I've been excited for the past monsters, but Orochi, I'm starting. I think I'm starting to get Boros excitement for it, because Boros was Orochi. If it's a delicate line, and I think the thing is, you know, as terrifying as Orochi is, Garo is. He's certainly up there, don't get me wrong. I mean, when all the heat blasts rain down on him and Goro's standing there, like, he's blocking, but he's taking it. And when he comes out, it's almost like nothing's happened to him. Like, the heat blast, I imagine, must hurt to a degree. But when if he has a... Okay, so first of all, Goro obviously observes this, but, like, his resistances and his physical ability are building up one after another. Like, he's like... It's like Goro wanted. He's constantly being put in these dead situations, and he's coming back and he's growing explosively stronger. He got stabbed, he got back up, and he started going, and he's a lot stronger now. He took the heat bombs from Overgrown Rover, and even these ones from Orochi. And I suppose this kind of links into if any of the S-Class heroes fight Garo, especially someone like Genos, whose main attacks is Incinerate, is his heat blasts, and obviously he's building these physical defenses. I don't think Genos can really do much to him now, because Genos had him outclassed before, but now the way he's going to very quickly outclass Genos. That says a lot, because Genos is incredibly powerful, even among the S-Class heroes. Whilst we haven't seen all the S-Class heroes do things, I think Garo is... He certainly got very quickly near to the top of S rank, without a doubt. It's amazing. And how is it made more amazing? By that wonderful panel of Orochi bearing down, like shooting fire flames. Orochi's cape catches on fire and he's like roaring, and the art's incredible. It's so good. This series is so good. I love it so much. That's why it's my favourite. It's my spoiler. If you didn't guess by now, if you've been watching, One Punch Man's my favourite. This is why. This art, this action, this storytelling, this comedy, this dramas. It's all so good! And what else can Orochi do while he's in his monster form? He can incarnate. He has these two forms, the human form and the monster form, and his control over them, I imagine, is so good that he can switch between the tendrils to the fist, and he goes to the fist and he goes to pound down on Garo. What does Garo do? He blocks it. He blocks an attack from Orochi, a giant fist, that the tendrils were a problem before. Garo's growth is so amazing. I honestly think if Orochi, this fight kept going and going and going and going, if Garo was at peak condition and this fight kept happening the way it did, or if he had one or two more fights, he might have been able to beat him. And I know, I can't say we haven't seen everything that Orochi's got. It doesn't seem like Orochi started to go to town on him, but at the same time, Garo's just been growing so exponentially throughout this fight. It's a different person. It's a different person to 12 hours ago when he was blocking gunfire from Death Gatlin to now he's going toe to toe with the King of Monsters quite well. So as Orochi sends him flying eventually. He sends him flying into a wall. Orochi kind of snaps his fist back and he changes it back and he's ready and he's in a stance again, you know. Goro makes the point of, because it's you know, despite what I said, Orochi's still, like, from what I said that, but at the same time, Orochi, from what Goro is saying, you know, is far beyond Goro's level. And she recognises that Goro has the potential to be stronger, but she says where he is at now, I think this is, this is more fair, because she does recognise Goro's potential, but she recognises that where Goro is now, he's nothing compared to Orochi. He's at a different level. But despite the fact she says that, Goro is just on another, he's so cool. And she advises him to give up and he goes, "Don't make me laugh," and his face comes out the ground and he's got to be enjoying himself. That's a wicked smile imprinted to the ground. Like, the fact that his smile, his eyes have been imprinted to the ground, and he goes, you know, you've got the power, but you've got something, there's something I've got that you'll never have, and that is true terror, and I'm going to teach you what true terror is. And I was enjoying this. I was like, yes, Goro. And obviously the shading gets darker and the panels get darker as he does this, so he's going to a very dark place, and obviously it's supposed to be really, obviously, a bad thing he's saying, but it's really emphasized by, like, the panels and the color, well, not the colors, of course, the inking of the panels. So Goro starts to take his stance and he gets there, and how does Orochi respond? He turns into his humanoid form and he takes the same stance. Now, Orochi, we don't know a lot about. Like, I'm very, like I said, despite the fact I think that was one of Murata's way of saying don't worry about him, I'm still really curious to learn as much as we can about Orochi. Because when he does stuff like this, and he's got like an excellent learning ability similar to Garo, I want to know his past, what he was before Goro took him in and was like, I'm going to turn you to the Monster King. And then that panel of them both kind of staring down, like, Goro truly realizing what it is to be the Monster King. And just Goro just be like, you think you're the only one who's special? You know, despite the fact how much she's been bigging up Garo, she's like, yeah, you're special and you have potential, but you're still, like, once I'm repeating myself, you're nothing compared to Orochi, and he's like, come and be terrified. Like, that panel, just like, come. And what was that pose? Let's see the pose, shall we? It was like that. There we go. It was like, come and be terrified. I was a little terrified. I was a little terrified. And Garo said himself, so you've adopted to a different battle style just to make it easier for me. This is how much Orochi's kind of looking down on Garo, is he doesn't even need to go to his monster form, which I would assume is his stronger form with all the power we've seen from that. But he actually changes back to his actual human, like his humanoid form, as Garo says, he's like, you know, so you made it easier, and changed to adaptable fighting style. And Garo's hiding behind his back. He's literally doing, I think, everything he can to catch Orochi off guard. So when he charges in, and this is kind of where Garo becomes, this is like the potential of Garo, where he's literally wielding water flowing, rock crushing fist in one hand, and whirlwind cutting, like, yeah, whirlwind iron cutting fist in the other hand. It's the power of Garo, like his ability to pick up new techniques, and let alone if he sees, like, the thing is, there aren't that many techniques in terms of monsters, but if he sees the S-Class heroes fight, then this could be the difference. Once again, I've said it a lot this time, another great panel of Orochi just kind of looking at Garo, like his, like, you know, he's got, like, kind of like what he appears to be, you know, you think he's, like, you know, he's got his humanoid form and his monster mouth, and they're all, the, like, the tendrils are attacking him, and the next thing we see is Garo defeated. And Goro makes her comments of, you know, you've got this intense desire to be a monster, but you do not present any of the traits of a monster. You live by our ideals, you know, you wanna defeat and kill heroes, you know, you wanna be the terror of humanity, yet you don't kill humans. And you don't have that lust that we have. You don't have this thing that monsters naturally have, this natural craving of destruction and carnage. So she actually just says, you know, this is kind of where she says to his benefit, because of how, in a sense, Garo is pure because he hasn't killed anyone yet. He hasn't killed any humans. And I suppose, once again, like I say this quite a bit, but once he kills a human, that's kind of the draw, that's kind of the line to decide on what Saitama's going to do with him. Because one thing Saitama does is he spares humans, but he kills monsters. And when Garo kills his first human, that shows, okay, Saitama's going to kill Garo, but if Garo survives, if Garo doesn't kill anyone and becomes a monster, this is kind of where there might be some chance of him surviving. But in any case, they basically do say, like, you know, this is, everything he's doing is actually just making him better and becoming more of a perfect monster candidate. As Goro and Orochi kind of stare at Garo, like, you know, this is great though, because we need to be prepared for him next. We need to get someone of Orochi's level here, because they might have a secret above S-Class. And who do we see? Who do we see next? We see a very simple Saitama just kind of walk in, look at a manhole and go, huh, I wonder what's down here. You can't do that! You can't end on that kind of note, and after such a fantastic chapter, and give it such a fantastic ending of, well, maybe Saitama will go down there and sort them out. I was like, no! I was so ready for Saitama to go away for ages, and then he'd come back at the end, and then he'd bob them all. I think the thing is, such a fantastic bit of this chapter was, of course, the Garo-Orochi fight. It was amazing. So good. But I think one thing I remember thinking a couple of times when I first read it was like, yo, what would happen if Saitama fought this guy? I'd love that so much. And we do, and the thing is, okay, so there've been talk. I've talked to some of you guys about this as well, and you guys have said, you know, I first was like, okay, Saitama might have to fight Orochi and take him down, or maybe something else will happen. I don't know. But then someone brought up a great point of, you know, what if Garo was to take down Orochi, which would make sense from the storytelling of, obviously, Garo wants to become the greatest monster, and he would take that title of Orochi if he managed to kill and defeat Orochi. Makes perfect sense to me, right? But at the same time, I think I want to be the only one who wasn't disappointed if we didn't get to see Saitama versus Orochi. Whether it was a massive fight, or whether Saitama... I would want the massive fight, personally, after this. But after Saitama bopped him... yeah. To be fair, if someone, however... I suppose in favour of Garo, maybe, or not Saitama, or maybe Saitama bopping him, is... that tends to be, we don't really see a person fight too much if, like, we don't see their abilities if we're going to have a big fight with Saitama, or we see all their abilities and Saitama bops them. So maybe Saitama is going to, so I think back to Deep Sea King and when he fought all the different heroes, Saitama showed up and one punched him. Obviously because that was the joke of it all and the massive build up of, like, you know, this is what happens always, like, a lot of the time when Saitama doesn't show up. But also, in comparison to someone like Suiryu or Boros, where Saitama had his bigger fights, we didn't see any of their abilities beforehand. They didn't have to go all out to anyone at all. Obviously because Boros was on the spaceship, but Suiryu didn't have to do that to anyone until he saw Saitama, and that's the only time he went all out, really. So maybe this is why either Garo will have a rematch with him and beat him, or because if Garo loses to someone, it's not very often he loses twice, is what we've seen. Apart from Saitama, of course. But yes, overall, wonderful chapter. Good building up the story, great action fight scene, of course, ends on a great note, really threw me off guard, because all it takes, really, is Saitama to get distracted, he puts that lid down, and he's gone away, and he won't show up again, or if he jumps down, he could get lost down there, I don't know, but there's a chance he could show up, and I'm really excited. It has to start, like, next time, it has to, because everything, the foreshadowing's out there, like, Saitama will probably get pushed out the way somehow because that's how the story goes. And if he does do this, it would throw me off my balance of, like, my knowledge of One Punch Man, but still. I liked it a lot. What did you think? Let me know down below. Let's have a discussion about it, please. Subscribe if you want to see more One Punch Man reviews, and like if you like this review, or like the chapter, because I really like the chapter. Thanks for watching. I hope you have a good day, and yeah, see you guys.